need a break from traditional coloring? Make a card today with me using a stamp set that has a matching layered stencil set. This one is from Simon Says Stamp and it's called Mandala Blossoms. I'm inking it up with Memento Tuxedo Black, which is reliable for not smudging even when I'm using water-based inks. So now I've got it stamped up. I'm going to place it on my craft tacky mat, which is actually beneath my Misty here. This one I think is the 7x7 one. And my cardstock is measuring 6x6. I crammed a lot of images on there. I'm also getting some more help from one of the color cards from Sarah Renee Clark's Color Cubes. And I've matched that with some Simon Says Stamp inks that I love. Zest, Cantaloupe, Sweets, Orchid, and Royal are my choices today. And we are going to color this pretty detailed stencil with the help of our small Simon Says Stamp blending brushes and these inks. My first step is to secure the stencil over the sections that I want to color. In a layered stencil set, the layers will isolate different sections of the image that you want to color, and the biggest choice you have to make is which color you want to apply where. I'm going to start with pink because that's easy for me. I have a default, I think, that starts with pink for many things, but I don't need much encouragement to gently add a little bit of pink ink here to the different exposed sections of my image. I'm using pretty light pressure because I don't want it to be too dark. I want a kind of a lighter blend of colors. Then I'm adding in a little bit of Cantaloupe ink here and using it to highlight some of the other sections of the same flower. I could have wiped off a little bit of the ink here from the Sweets application that I put down first, but I just decided to blend it in a little bit, and I'm okay with that. Now I'm moving the same stencil around to color other sections of my stamped images. And here I'm going for the butterfly, which I'm coloring again with pink ink, the Sweets ink from Simon Says Stamp. I'm adding in a little bit of Orchid. I blended it off first onto my glass mat because that allows me to not overdo on the ink application, which I find it very, very easy to do. I'm moving the stencil again now to color the smaller butterfly and getting a little help from some painter's tape. I'm using the delicate painter's tape from Frog Tape, and I've decided to color the bottom of the wings of that butterfly with Cantaloupe and the upper part of the wings with Sweets. A little light ink blending, and I've got a nice little ombre going on there. For the final butterfly, just one more move and I secure it in place again with the help of my crafty tape, and I'm ready to color it with, more pink ink. I guess I'm deciding to color it as the same as a large butterfly on top, so you'll forgive me. I will choose other colors as we continue. Now that was pretty easy, so I'm getting a little help from my microfiber cloth to clean off my stencil as well as my desk space before I move on to the next stencil. So here I'm going to focus on the second layer of that flower that's in the heart of that bouquet, and we're going to add some Zest ink to a couple of those flowers. Perfect. So I'm going to just blend in that Zest ink. I want a little bit of a deeper tone, so I'm going a little heavier on the yellow ink application here. Now I can continue adding color to my butterflies. And for this one, I'm actually going to choose a Cantaloupe, and the second layer of this large butterfly will be with Cantaloupe ink. Be patient with your ink blending. Don't succumb to the urge to be overzealous and load up your brush with too much ink. A little bit of ink goes a long way, because you can always add color, but it's really, really hard and sometimes impossible to take it away. So I'm going to keep going here with my smaller butterfly, adding more zest to this particular butterfly. And with that, I get to my medium butterfly, but I think my ink pads are in the way, so those are going to have to move out of the way for me to get comfortable with the stenciling here. And yes, I am reusing that little piece of painter's tape as much as I can. It's low tack, so it doesn't damage the paper if you are careful with it. And for this middle butterfly, or the middle sized butterfly, again, I added more Zest ink and a little bit of cleanup on aisle 3, and my stencil is good to go. I'm taking another layer of the stencil to continue coloring the flower. I'm going to isolate the section that I want to color, and then I will secure my stencil to the mat. I'm going to add some more zest here. I think I've decided to make these particular flowers all yellow, those little ones on the outside, and a little cantaloupe for the middle section of that large flower. Well, I guess I changed my mind there because I covered it up with orchid. Alrighty then. It's okay for a gal to change her mind. Remember, you can switch up your colors as long as the colors you're laying are compatible and not going to create a muddy color if that's not what you want. So there we go. And we've got those layers colored in. And now I'm ready to finish that large butterfly. A pretty colorful butterfly with yellow in the center and all kinds of pinks and purples on the outside. I think I'll go for this middle flower here, and I am going to layer over it a darker color. So it's got that zest all over, and because that's a yellow, I can now layer a darker color kind of in the same tone, which is cantaloupe, to go over that, and it won't become a problem. So just a very slight color shift there with cantaloupe, and then adding some sweets on top. Now I can move on to my smallest butterfly and add some royal for the very center of that butterfly's wings. All done there. That works. Time to go ahead and do a little cleanup of this stencil, which is looking pretty colorful. I fairly recently started using microfiber cloths. Yes, I'm pretty ashamed, but I was wasting a lot environmentally as well as money in using baby wipes, which are great for pastes and other things that are a bit harder to clean up and get off of a towel. But for ink cleanup, I really do think a microfiber cloth is a great way to clean up in your craft room. I've decided to go with cantaloupe for the next layer of that large central flower, and decided to darken it a little bit towards the center. Now I can get to another one of those exterior yellow flowers and give it a healthy dose of that zest ink. Adding a little blue here to these leaves. This is a totally fantastical bloom in terms of the color choices I'm making here. And sometimes it's nice to do something that has no particular relation with nature, but just something kind of funky and out there. And that's what I'm going for with these mandala blossoms. So starting with the cantaloupe again, and then adding in a little bit of sweets to get that color transition. And cleaning up the stencil a little bit before I do a final cleanup and move on to the next stencil. So more sweets and then cantaloupe for these little details. And once I've picked that up and shifted it around, I can do the last detail on that, on those exterior flowers to get that last yellow one at the bottom, and on that central flower that I'm going to get to in just a second. Some more cantaloupe on that large bloom, and then a little sweets to darken it. And then I've decided to go in with a pretty contrasting color for the Royale for that large central flower. Great, we're all done there. A little bit of cleanup, and I think we're good to go. I have made a bit of a mess, but that's okay because the parts that I'm actually going to die cut are good to die cut. And if you don't feel like fussy cutting, you're going to want to get the die cuts that coordinate with this set. And you can see I have them here on a magnet sheet, and I've just attached the Simons' stamp packaging to remind me what's on that magnet sheet should I ever keep it outside the package. But before I do that, I'm going to stamp up some additional items from that same set. I have a tendency to stamp more than I need, and in this case I'm stamping a couple sentiments because I'm not really sure which one I'm going to use, and some additional butterflies. I don't actually end up using the butterflies in this particular flower, but I ended up with a couple of extra pieces from all of the stenciling and coloring I did with this set that I think I'm going to use to make a second card. So keep an eye out for that on my Instagram, which is @PaperMint, if you haven't found me yet on Instagram. Now, here's one of my favorites, this VersaFine Clear in Nocturne. This is a pigment ink that is absolutely fabulous, particularly when stamping sentiments. I always feel like I get a really great, clean impression when I use the VersaFine Clear ink. And you probably don't need to stamp it twice like I do, but I'm a nervous stamper. I feel like the second time is for good luck. I'm cutting up some additional frog tape here that I use for holding my die cuts in place. Purple tape is really good. I've seen many crafters use that. I stock up on this frog tape actually at my local Sherwin-Williams because I find it most inexpensive there, and I use it in a number of different ways in my craft room. And here I'm using it to hold my die cuts in place because I don't trust myself to get them through my trusty rusty Sizzix without them shifting around. So now they're all in place, and I'm just running them through my Sizzix so I can get them nicely, cleanly cut. I do it once forward and once backwards just to make sure I've got the right pressure all over and I can get a clean cut all around. And I'm doing the sentiments here. I think I've shifted my craft mat while I'm doing this. I hope I haven't, but it may be a bit twisted in the upcoming scenes if you see that. Now, as you can see, I did the butterflies separately, but since we won't be using these, don't stress out about them for this card. But of course, if you plan on making a second card like me, you may want to hang on to those pieces as well. So now that I've die cut, I'm popping out all of my die cuts, and I'm actually saving all those little pieces of tape because I will reuse them over and over and over again until they get fed up with me and give up. Now, the second step here after your stenciling is to do a bit of embossing. We're using the Hopping Hexagons 3D embossing folder from Simons' stamp. And I'm pairing that with one of Simons' newest colors, which is the Cornflower color. Beautiful, soft blue that I am cutting in half on the longest side to 5.5. And I'm cutting again to 4.25 or 4.25. With that done, I've got that A2 sized panel, the 4.25 by 5.5, to place in my embossing folder. and I'm going to run it again through my Sizzix machine. Now that I've got it secure there, just takes a little bit of elbow grease and I will get it through the embossing folder. It didn't catch quite as well as I wanted to that first time, so I'm giving it a second go, and there we go. I go slowly because this takes a little bit more elbow grease on my part to get it through the machine. And this is a pretty deep embossing folder. It creates very distinct marks in the paper, so be gentle with it. Now I'm just going to trim it down a bit because I've decided that I actually want to do this embossed layer a bit inset from the card base. The card base is also going to be out of that same cornflower blue, and we're going to use the other half of that cardstock that we cut just now to make the card base. Now that I've trimmed that down, I can clean up the scraps and put my tool away. And I'm going to apply a little bit of tape here, a tape runner. Oh my goodness, I forgot what I wanted to tell you guys. A little bit of tape runner here. It's a Simon Says stamp tape runner, and I'm actually applying it to a piece of foam. And that foam is going to give me the dimension that I want to lift my cardstock off of the card base. And you see, I wasn't careful and I tore my paper there, but I was able to put it back together, thank goodness, with a little bit of help from the glue and that foam base. Now we're going to create the card base. I'm going to score that using my little mini scoring board at 4 1/4. And now I've got the card base and that layer on which all of our pretty stencil pieces are going to sit. A little bit more of that tape runner all around the edges and a couple streaks through the middle will get us nice and secure to place that embossed piece on top of the card base. So I'm just centering that. I'm the worst at centering. I always struggle with getting my pieces exactly where they should be. And I'm trying to be gentle with my cardstock here because I was a little merciless with it and tore it, but I'm not giving up on this card. See, I used some of that delicate painter's tape to hold the card in place while I place the other elements on top of it. I'm just kind of figuring out where I want things to be and laying them out to get an idea if the way that I'm envisioning this card in my head, if it's going to work out on paper. So I've got my sentiment that was die cut, and I'm going to use some of the extra butterflies, but I've decided to use the black ones because I find they'll stand out more than if I use blue on blue. And I like the striking effect of those small black butterflies just flitting around the card. There. I'm happy generally with that layout, so it's time to start getting things into place and applying adhesive. I'm using Simon Says Stamp's thin foam squares. These are the mini ones, and I think I'm going to need a little help from my tweezers to get this all done. Okay, yeah, so I will apply the adhesive with the help of the tweezers, using those to help me pick up those little pieces, which, especially if you have nails of any length, getting tweezers to help you out with grabbing some of these smaller pieces is always really good. Here I'm using it both to help me pick up the tweezer, pick up the small die cuts, as well as to apply the little foam square onto the die cut. This is another thing I started doing really recently, which is using my tweezers. I used to neglect them, but I find them so handy, and I've watched so many crafters use them so efficiently. My newest favorite tool is this precision press glue gun from the creators of the Misty, I think My Sweet Petunia. And I filled the Nuvo bottle here with my favorite craft adhesive, which is the Barely Craft Glue. I've watered it down a little bit to make it flow just the way I want to. I think you have to find kind of the right consistency for your preferred consistency for your glue. This one is slightly watery, which is perfect for mine. You don't want it to be too watery, so it is just running out of your ink applicator. I'm sorry, out of your glue applicator, but this particular consistency gives it a nice flow. I've attached the foam dots on the left side of the adhesive, but I'm using glue on the right because I'm elevating the left side to the height of the die cut, and then using glue to apply the sentiment to the large stencil die cut. Finally, I'm ready to remove all of those the backers on my foam pieces so I can apply my butterflies. And a little bit of wiggling to get this straight, and a little bit of extra glue to make sure that holds just the way I want it to. Now I can get rid of my little pieces of tape to give you a little bit of a closer view of what it's looking like. But the card needs some jewelry, and I have two options here. Some lilac sequins and some duckling sequins from Simon Says Stamp. I'm gonna go with the duckling because they contrast really nicely against that the cornflower cardstock. And I am just getting my little container open and dumping some into the triangle tray so I can begin to lay them out onto the card. I don't apply them immediately, I just kind of put them onto the card to figure out where I want them to be and fiddle with them a bit until I've got them exactly where I want them. Once I'm satisfied with the placement, then I'll actually come in with the glue to secure everything. But this is just a little bit of me fussing around. I am going to need to get those pieces of painter's tape back to help me hold things in place. And with that, I think I'm almost ready to glue. Great. So a little cleanup of the nozzle, and I use that in my left hand while I place the sequins with my little pick and place stick from Simon Says Stamp. I think that's actually called something else, so I'll link everything in the description of this so you can know what I'm using today if you find anything that strikes your fancy. My sequins are all applied, so I'm pretty happy. And I just need to clean up the workspace now so I can give you a closer look at our simple and easy stenciled card. I really hope you enjoyed today's project and you'll come back and see me for more.